Everyone knows what a camel is, right? Have you seen one in person at a zoo? Everyone probably, and I'm sure you've watched National Geographic and you've seen a camel. Some camels have one big hump on their back and some have two, and you can ride the camel kind of like a saddle. And camels are big, pretty big. If you're in New Hampshire, we have moose. And the moose in New Hampshire are even smaller than camels. So camels are pretty big, I would think. Jesus says something very interesting today about camels, who were the mode of transportation in Jesus' day, that and horses. He says something very interesting about people who are rich, people who have it all, who lack not one good thing, who could eat lobster every day. He says one thing about them: it's going to be easier for the camel, the big camel, to go through, and if anybody sews, and the older you get, it's even hard to put a little bit of thread through the eye of the needle. I know when I pop a button, oh my God, forget it. I just leave the button off and I apologize. Because to get that button threaded, that needle threaded for that button, forget it. Forget it. So can you imagine trying to get a camel through the eye of a needle? Almost impossible, right? There's no way that you could do it. Could you think you could get it done? No. Even Hunter could not. And he's pretty smart. Landon said he might. He can't. Oh, he can't. So he's pretty smart, but you cannot get a camel through the eye of a needle. Our question today is, how do we as Christians do that? How do we do that? We're asked to do that. How do we do that in our daily life? Get the camel through the eye of a needle. Because I can tell you, compared to many other countries throughout the world, we're pretty rich. Even the poorest of us have health care, have decent food, and if you're really, really poor, you might have food stamps that would help you out. But in our country, even the poor are rich compared to those in Africa and in those throughout the world, even in China. So we are asked the question, how are we going to get that camel today through the eye of the needle? Because if we know, Jesus says, it's easier for you to do that than to go to heaven. So we really have to think about it. How are we going to thread that needle? Each and every one of us. How are we going to do it? It's impossible, Jesus says. It is impossible for man to do it. It's impossible for everybody here to do it. None of us can do it. There is no way that we can do it. But with God, everything is possible. Nothing is impossible. And sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we forget that everything is possible with God because we get so immersed in the world and we get immersed in everyday trials in our lives and going to work and having to do this and having to do that, that we forget the mystery of God, that God can do all things. And we've been disappointed before. We've been disappointed. And sometimes we feel we've been disappointed by God. Let's be honest. We've all felt that. When someone dies, when someone dies in our life close to us, whether it be a mother or a father or a child, We are disappointed. Our heart is broken. And we're disappointed sometimes with God. And we want Him to speak. And we want Him to answer the prayer. And sometimes He says nothing at all. He says nothing at all. And when He does say nothing at all, it is our job to sit and to find God anyway. For He will speak through a person in your life, through a situation in your life. But sometimes we might not hear, as St. Francis heard, from the cross, go rebuild my church, as we talked about in Bible study this week. We don't hear it clear like that. Because sometimes God says nothing at all. And that's heartbreaking. When we want an answer today, how's my rent getting paid, God? How's my kid going to school? How am I to do this? How is this house going to be ready to sell? That's my biggest thing. I wake up at 4 in the morning and I'm worried about a house being sold. Isn't it crazy, the things we worry about? Who cares? Really, who cares? Jesus tells me today, the more I acquire, the harder it is for me to get my camel through the eye of the needle. So letting go sometimes is the best thing. You sleep much better at night, along with melatonin. Today, we are asked to thread that needle with the camel, to give to the poor, and to turn to Him when we need Him, even sometimes when He says nothing at all. Amen.